Yes, there we are. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sean Sullivan. I'm a reporter for the York County Coast-Star. This is...
I'm Tammy Wells, and I am mostly retired, but I do a little writing, and some people choose to publish it, so here we go.
Our paper included, right? Like I said last night. We're your moderators for tonight. This is the City of Sanford's annual, or rather every 2 years, right, Candidates Night for the state legislature. I want to thank all of you for being here, the candidates who I'll introduce in a moment, the people here behind us at City Hall, and of course everybody watching at home. Thank you for joining us. Let's see, before we begin, I was thinking perhaps we could take just a quick moment of silence in recognition. I'm sure we all know somebody in Florida, and they're facing some terrible weather with Hurricane Milton. So we'd like to begin with them in mind. So how about just a quick moment? And thank you. Okay. So we're going to follow the same format that for those of you who tuned in last night when we asked questions of local candidates, municipal candidates, and school committee candidates. We're going to follow that same format. And basically, the way it will go is each candidate will have a 1-minute introductory statement. Then we'll have a question and answer session. Since you are the only ones that we're doing this with tonight, last night we had 3 segments, we have 35 questions for you. No, just kidding, 10. Sounds easier now, right? There you go. And you will each have 90 seconds to respond to each question. Then, at the end of it, you'll each have 2 minutes for what we like to call here the elevator pitch, your final word to voters, 2 minutes to make your case in the hopes that they will vote for you. So let's begin with, I'll introduce the candidates as they appear from left to right here on the screens. First, we have in the race for Senate District 33, we have incumbent Republican Matthew Harrington, welcome, and Democratic challenger Daniel Lazan, welcome. And then we move on to House District 141, where we have Democratic challenger Patricia Kidder, welcome to you, and Republican incumbent Luke Lanigan, hello. Then Legislative District, the House District 142, we have Republican challenger Amy Bell, welcome, and the Democratic incumbent Anne Marie Mastracchio, hello. And the last race that we have welcomed here this evening is for House District 143, where we have Republican incumbent Anne Marie Fredericks, good evening, and Democratic challenger Catherine Menendez Hall, welcome. Okay, so with that, please keep that in mind. Those of you who are watching here or at home, these are 4 separate races with each of the contestants seated next to each other with the seat that they're seeking indicated between them. So let's begin with those introductions. Going from left to right, we'll start with you, Mr. Harrington.
Good evening. Thank you, Sean, Tammy, for hosting this event, as always. The honor to represent Sanford always goes through your 2 friendly faces, so it's good to see you all and appreciate you doing this. I am Senator Matt Harrington. I'm completing my first term in the Maine Senate. Prior to that, I served 4 terms in the House of Representatives, representing Sanford as well. I currently work as a police officer and as a realtor, and I live here in Sanford with my wife, Lauren.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Lazan?
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Lazan. I'm running for, I'm the opponent to my good friend Matt, and I'm running for this seat. I'm a retired locomotive engineer, and I was the elected legislative representative for the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, representing all the locomotive engineers in New England. And later on, as we go through the questions, I'll give you some of the really good reasons why I feel that I'm going to have a lot to offer to the constituents in this Senate district.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Ms. Kidder?
My name is Patty Kidder, and I'm running for the Maine House District 141 because I believe our district deserves a voice in Augusta from someone who understands our needs. I grew up in Chapley around my family's business, Plymouth Square Pond Marina, and raised my family here in Springvale. I've spent my entire life rooted in the values and challenges of our community. I've spent the last 12 years building relationships with key legislators in Augusta and advocating for policies that benefit us all. I was recognized in 2018 with the Healthcare Hero Award from the Consumers for Affordable Healthcare. Now I want to take that experience inside the State House to serve you better. Our current rep has missed over 1/3 of the votes during the last legislative session. You deserve a rep who shows up and gets the job done. I'm a retired as a small business owner, and representing you will be my top priority.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lanigan?
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Tammy, and the City of Sanford for hosting this. I have the great pleasure of representing Shapley, Newfield, and parts of Springvale and Sanford. Completing my first term up at the state legislature, it was quite an experience compared to my days on the city council here as a councilor and a deputy mayor. Though I appreciate the learning curve that there is, Ms. Patricia Kidder pointed out some great facts, and I'd like to address that real quick. And I'm missing a gallbladder, so I had some kind of a reason, but it's all good. We'll get to that. And I just want to say that one of the things that I bring to the table as the representative of this area is I'm an independent voice. I listen to all my constituents. When I'm elected as your representative, I don't just represent the R's that elect me. I represent everybody in my district. And I listen to everybody. I listened to Patty when she was up lobbying this year in Augusta as a lobbyist for some of her programs. Though I might not agree with all of them, I did take the time to listen and see if that would be better for our hardworking Mainers that are already overtaxed and underpaid. So I appreciate your vote, and I appreciate being here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Lanigan. Ms. Bell?
Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Amy Bell. My family moved to Maine in 1996 to East Millinocket. We lived there for 7 years. We moved to Sanford in 2003, and we've been part of the East Side since 2003. We love people. I love people. Our church is in the heart of the district. I'm not a politician by any fashion or form, but I'm a wife, a mother, and a grandmother who wants to see change, a good place for my children to raise their children and for my grandchildren to grow up. I do believe that I can bring fresh eyes to Augusta. I've had a wonderful time this summer. I've knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors and met lots of wonderful people, and I love people, and I think that I can work for the people in District 142.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Ms. Mastracchio?
Good evening. I'm Anne Marie Mastracchio, and it has been my honor to represent parts of Sanford and Springvale in the Maine legislature for 10 years. When I first ran for state office in 2012, I felt I could be an effective advocate for Sanford, and I think I fulfilled that expectation. My experience and perspective, even in a citizen legislature such as ours, is unique. I have years of experience at all levels of municipal, school, and state governance, having served as a school committee member, town councilor, state legislator, and mayor. Understanding the impact and consequences of legislation on all entities is one of a legislator's most important functions. My husband Al and I moved to Sanford in 1982 when he opened his optometric practice right up the street from where we still live and where I worked as his office manager for 20 years until his retirement a number of years ago. My education and work before we moved to Maine to raise our family was as a public health dental hygienist in the North End of Boston. We have 2 children raised and educated in Sanford, Carla and Joe, and 3 grandsons.
Thank you. Ms. Menendez Hall?
Good evening. My name is Katie Menendez Hall, and I'm running for Maine House District 143. I've been a Maine resident for almost 20 years, with the last 7.5 being at Sanford. I'm a forester and wildlife biologist by training, receiving my bachelor's and master's education from the University of Maine at Orono. In addition to service on numerous boards and committees, I am a manager at Central Maine Power, and I'm responsible for a team of folks who give their all every day to maintaining safe and reliable power. For a customer base of 676,000 people, I'm responsible for coordinating and implementing the vegetation management programs. I bring this up because I can assure you I am no stranger to working through conflict and having insightful conversations with people who have completely different viewpoints than I do. My husband and I, who's also a line worker for the company, are raising our 2 children here, Ryan, who just started kindergarten at Margaret Chase Smith, and April, who will join her brother at MCS next year. I am running to help create positive, meaningful, and impactful solutions for our town, and for those of you that I haven't met before, I hope tonight gives you a bit more insight of me as a person and as well as your potential legislator in Augusta. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fredericks?
Good evening. My name is Anne Marie Fredericks. I am an average citizen of Sanford. I am a wife, a mother, a grandmother. I enjoy the Elks. I enjoy the YMCA. I enjoy being a parishioner. I enjoy being a volunteer at Shaw's Field. I am a nurse practitioner. I've worked with the Veterans Administration healthcare system for more than 35 years, caring for veterans. Our family now owns a small business named Vetted here in Sanford. I'm also very concerned about the cost of living being so high and our spending being out of control. Our family is having trouble to make ends meet, and I hope to return to Augusta to work harder and more louder and stop the excessive spending.
Excellent. Thank you for everybody for your introductions. To my left, by the way, we have Kendra Williams, and she's the one that's going to keep the trains running on time, right? We have, with these questions, for which, as I said, you'll have 90 seconds. She will tell you when the 1-minute mark, right? The 30-second mark? Okay. At the 30-second mark, you'll get that indication that it's time to wrap it up and find a way to conclude your answer. Okay, so thank you. She did this for us last night, did a wonderful job, so thank you for coming back again this evening. Okay, question number 1. The homeless population in our districts is diverse, comprised of people who struggle with substance use and mental health issues and others who might not have such challenges and are just plain down on their luck. If elected, what will you do at the state level to supplement our city's efforts to help homeless individuals and to address the larger issues related to our unhoused population? Mr. Lazan, we'll start with you since Mr. Harrington went first in the previous round of introductions.
Okay, so I'm kind of looking forward to this. My experience, this is going to sound a little bit off track. As I mentioned earlier, I represented the locomotive engineers in New England. Now, one thing that happens with locomotive engineers is, unfortunately, you're running a train and people commit suicide in front of you. When that happens, you're not the same person. You are now most likely going to be suffering from PTSD. Now, if PTSD isn't treated properly, it's going to manifest itself either with a substance abuse or could even be marital abuse. It's going to have to manifest itself somewhere. So we ended up realizing that a lot of our members were, becoming dependent on substances. So we developed a program. Matter of fact, I was one of the founding fathers of this, of a program that we would actually effectively treat substance abuse with our members. And so that's kind of what I want to try to bring, because I had at least 35 years experience in dealing with this crisis. So, and talking to voters door to door, I found that in certain sections of Sanford, a lot of the constituents are deeply concerned about the homeless situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kidder?
I'll be honest with you, I don't really know exactly what I would do, except talk with the other legislators that have been up there and have been tackling this problem for a while. And I do know that we have a new facility being built in Alfred that is going to help with mental health and also with training our firefighters and emergency personnel. And I do believe that is a really good place to start. And we need more programs of some kind to help people get into homes that they can count on every night, because they cannot get their lives back together without knowing where they're going to spend the night.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Lanigan?
Thank you, Sean. Well, this is it's kind of funny. It's brought up is we have $1 billion shortfall right now in the state. We've had more revenue come into the state, and this issue is not new. This is an old issue. This is an addiction, and this last legislator, I feel like we did nothing for it. Now, we can blame the Democrats because they were in control of the House and the Senate and the governorship, but we need to blame ourselves as legislators that we didn't push harder to do that. We need to come through and we need to implement plans that will work across community lines, not just in the urban areas like Portland. That's where all the focus is. We have, here in Sanford, we have just as big of an issue. So we need a comprehensive and a proactive approach to address these issues. We need to work together across lines with community action programs like York YCCAC. We need to work with nonprofits. This isn't just going to solve itself with state money. Matter of fact, we probably don't have any money in the state to solve this issue now. We've spent it all on other programs that had nothing to do with the key problems in the state of Maine. Mainers' energy costs are out of control, and it's causing people to lose their homes. They can barely afford to stay in it. I'm fortunate to have my wife and I with an income, and I still have to work extra and be a legislator to make it with 4 kids. So I feel what Mainers feel, and we're kind of sick of it, and we need to make that change, but we need to make it together. We can't just be, because the Democrats have control, just push us off to the side with no solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bell?
Yes, sir. I do. I also agree that more needs to be done for mental health. So we have people, parishioners in our church with PTSD, and it's real. And we have had programs. We are a nonprofit, and we have reached into our community, and we've attempted to feed the homeless, and we have attempted to have programs to help them get off of their addictions. And it is a very, very difficult job to do. More of it needs to be done. We need to work harder. Mental illness is real. I just had a friend just yesterday that I spoke with that her son came back from Iran with PTSD. He was in a facility, but the facility turned him out because they couldn't keep him any longer, and they turned him out, and he committed suicide. Homeless, we get aggravated at them, and people say, we want them off of our streets, but it's really, really sad. They can't help themselves. So we do have to work harder. And I'm willing to go to Augusta and work and cross party lines or whatever needs to happen to make that happen so that the homeless population, especially in Sanford, knocking doors all summer. I met multiple people, and that was the question they asked me. What are you going to do about the homeless people, the homeless population? I'm willing to do my part.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mastracchio?
Thanks for the question. I'm going to disagree with Representative Lanigan, because I know we did a lot of work and we put a lot of money into exactly the issues that he spoke about. I, for one, had my very first emergency request. I've never put an emergency bill in for, and this was to fund on an ongoing basis homeless shelters. I'm really proud of the work that Sanford has done with our mental health unit. I did that work when I was mayor, and that work has been continued. There's a homeless task force that deals with those issues every day, and as a legislator, I stayed in close contact with the city manager and the mayor and the city council to work on the issues that they thought would help them with this crisis, and that is why I put that bill in, and we were able to fund low-barrier shelters, and in fact, we will have a Housing First unit that should go down somewhere around Heritage Crossing, and that will take care of a lot of the individuals who are on the street because they don't want to give up the use of their drugs. They don't want to follow all the rules, and this place will be housing first. Let's deal with their issues. What we have to do is address the reasons that they're on the street, the reasons that whether it's mental health or it's just simply that they want to keep doing the drugs that they're doing. They're just not ready to get help yet. So I think we're doing a good job. I object strongly to people that say that we haven't done anything. All of those issues were in the supplemental budget, and it's too bad that none of the legislators that are up here voted for the supplemental budget, because that directly helped Sanford if they voted for it.
Thank you. Ms. Menendez Hall?
If voted in, what I would look to do is first speak with the city of Sanford. I know they've done quite a bit of work in terms of addressing not only the unhoused population, but mental health services. I also am aware of other surrounding cities that have done similar work and have similar concerns in their communities, and certainly that would be a conversation I'd like to expand outward to other representatives and senators within the state, because we can all work together and share ideas with each other to help combat this. Like many people up here, mental health is something that's coming up time and time again, and I really think that, for any of these things, they're all very interconnected, mental health services being one of them, and that is a very strong pillar of mine. I'm sure we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but that's one of the things I've talked about quite a bit while out in the community and speaking with people about my passion for mental health. I volunteer for a nonprofit that does a lot of work in Sanford and surrounding communities, and it's personally impacted my life. So really what I'd like to do is just build those conversations, work together. As I stated in my opening, I'm not a politician. I'm just somebody who genuinely likes to work with people regardless of what political affiliation they're with. And at the end of the day, I think most people agree on most things, and even if they don't go about it the same way, there's generally some common ground.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fredericks?
I think the mental health issue cannot be addressed fully without ensuring that there is safe, stable, and affordable housing for that individual. You can't initiate treatment if they don't have a roof over their head. And I agree with Representative Lanigan that we have not done enough. And I don't know that money is always the answer. We're 80,000 units short in the state of Maine for housing, for affordable housing. And I see it as a call for action to incentivize developers, to invite developers to come to our beautiful state of Maine and start building. And how can we expedite that? By way of minimizing regulation, cutting back on permits, shrinking the timeline. When a developer does come, and there's months and months of activity before they can even shovel one piece of dirt. I think that we've got to, even for the small, the first home buyer, that they need to also have the same incentives. They need to have closing costs minimized. We need to make it quick and easy for people to land into safe and stable housing. I want to give a shout out to our Director of Sanford Housing. Diane Small does a fabulous job of ranking individuals that are in need of housing here. Veterans, disabled, elderly. There's a process. She applauds those that graduate from assistance, and she helps these individuals to get into housing, and also repurposing idle vacant properties in Sanford and renovating them for Sanford residents. I think those are all good strategies.
Thank you. And for the final word on question 1, Mr. Harrington.
I think we as state legislators have an obligation to provide the resources that are needed for those who are seeking help. I don't think we're doing enough to provide those resources. But the other half of that, and a lot of what we're facing here in Sanford, are people who don't want to get help. And those problems are being exacerbated by needle exchange programs that aren't really needle exchanges, they're just needle giveaways. The Attorney General's homelessness protocol, which we're just enabling homeless people to continue to exist, in their current status. I think we need to take a more aggressive approach and force people to seek the services that we provide. And I just will say, I take exception to the implication that the legislators up here, didn't support programs for Sanford. The legislators up here, all of us but one, looked at the current status of the state budget, thought we were dramatically overspending, and the revenue forecasting has shown that we're about $1 billion short in revenue in the next few years. So, I would just leave it at that.
There's question 1. Tammy?
And Patricia Kidder gets question 2 first. And if any of you need questions repeated as we go along, speak up. Ms. Kidder, some communities have chosen to require developers of market-rate rental housing to include a number of workforce housing units or pay a fine. The state supports very low-income housing in partnership with the federal government. Should the state financially assist developers to create workforce housing units? Why or why not?
I do believe that we should support workforce housing, because if people cannot afford to live where they're working, they're not going to work there. I have neighbors that have had to travel all the way to Bath Iron Works to have a living wage job. They've had to go all the way to the shipyard in Portsmouth to have a living wage job. That's just not acceptable, because it takes away too much time out of a person's life, and time is the most valuable commodity we have. Once it's gone, you'll never get it back. They need that time to be with families, and they need to be able to afford their homes near where they work. I don't know what else to say other than we need affordable housing for our workforce. Middle-class folks can't afford to buy a house. When I moved to Springfield, we had a program that made it so that we didn't have to come up with all our closing costs. Maine State Housing needs to do something.
Thank you. Mr. Lanigan.
Thank you, Tammy. The question is a good one. When I was on the city council, I always spoke of workforce housing versus low-income housing, Section 8 housing. Our state seems to enable people to stay in poverty versus enabling them to come out of poverty. And the state needs to really shift their focus to bringing people up with the tide versus just drowning them with limits and cliffs, as our welfare system is set up to do. Workforce housing is for our teachers, our police officers, our firefighters, our shipyard workers when they first start. That wage is not as great as it will be when they get to usually a 5-year mark in their employment. So this will allow them to come and see some roots in your community and be a productive member of the community, providing maybe volunteer services, having their kids go to the school. These are the housing that we need to actually grow our community in the direction that we want versus taking it back where we were 20, 30 years ago. I'm all for workforce housing. I'd actually like to see more of it in our community than we provide low-income housing. I also like to see our beach communities, all the nice oceanfront properties out there, all those nice communities out there, actually take some low-income housing because they actually have the jobs. They have the way to lift these people up. It seems that at Sanford, we get stuck with it because of the demographics or whatever it is with a lot of that housing. So I'd like to see a shift in that mentality and have some of our oceanfront communities step up and actually take on some of these housing and provide that employment that they have our people traveling from Sanford. And it's good for the environment. You don't have to drive as far. No, you don't have to use as much gas. So it's a win-win for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bell?
My bad. I do believe that workforce housing is beneficial to Sanford. Currently, I know a young couple that is trying to obtain a mortgage and permits, like Mrs. Frederick spoke of, closing costs, down payments. This young man does work at the shipyard, and they are trying to make ends meet. And our economy is such that two working incomes still can't often make ends meet. And I do believe workforce housing would help our police department and our fire department workers and our school teachers and all of those things. So I would be in favor of workforce housing.
Thank you. Ms. Mastracchio?
So in Sanford, we recognize, and we recognized a long time ago, that housing is the key to everything. I was the mayor who held the first housing forum, and the current mayor has had two others. So we understand housing is the basis for everything. We can't ask people to come to work here. We have a labor shortage. If they come here, they can't find a job. We have a new fire chief who still can't find a place that he can call home. So I believe we need all kinds of housing. We need to make it easier in some ways. Right now, there's a mishmash of funding and help that developers can get to make these affordable for them to build, whether it's affordable, low income, or just subsidized. There's a lot of different housing that's needed. We need all of it. And I believe that we could probably do a better job if we were able to just give subsidies right to those developers and cut a lot of the red tape, because right now it takes about 3 years from when they first get their approval to when they finally break ground or when they begin to talk about their project. I look around Sanford, we're building a lot of different kinds of apartments, different kinds of housing, and I think that LD 2003 will go a long way to helping us get those 80,000 units that we're going to need, I think they said, by 2030. So I'm satisfied that we're at least on the way. We've got a lot in the pipeline, still a lot of work to do.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
I'm going to be that person who asks you to repeat the question because it's been a few answers since I've heard it.
No problem. I can get the words out. Some communities have chosen to require developers of market-rate rental housing to include a number of workforce housing units or pay a fine. The state supports very low-income housing in partnership with the federal government. Should the state financially assist developers to create workforce housing units? Why or why not?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd like to make sure I capture all the things that you're asking. Certainly this would be an area that I don't have an overwhelming volume of knowledge in, but certainly I feel like I would support workforce housing. It seems like it would be something that would be beneficial to this community, as many people have mentioned. There's a lot of people who have long commutes to gain employment or to their employment. There are a number of hardworking families that are having issues finding a home that they can afford within the current economy here. Things look like they're starting to get better, but my husband and I were fortunate when we bought our recent home in 2009. It was at a point where interest rates were very low. If we were to buy the same home today, our mortgage would be significantly higher, and we work very hard for what we have, but we're very conservative as well because things are increasing and the cost of living just keeps going up. So in my opinion, it feels like workforce housing would be one of many solutions that would be good. Thank you, Kendra.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks?
If we want to invite industry to Maine, or better still, if we want big industry to come to Sanford, we better be sure that we have workforce housing for them. If we want Amazon to land right here close to our airport, we better be sure that we have workforce housing. By way of having workforce housing, that will also ensure that we have people buying goods and services in our community, stimulating our commerce in our community. So it's not just Section 8 housing that we need. We need workforce housing. We need housing for the asset-limited, income-constrained employed. What's that? The ALICE. These are those people that are both working, like candidate Bell said, but can't move forward. They're working poor. They're our Mainers. And we need housing for them as well. We need to make it easy and accessible for everybody. But definitely, if we want to invite industry into our state, better still into our city, we better be sure that there's housing for the employees.
Thank you. Mr. Harrington.
I think, by and large, my general philosophy is get government out of the way. I think, by and large, government is generally the problem with creating housing. We need to reduce the permitting requirements. We need to make it cheaper to build a house. We can have safe housing with smoke detectors, but, do we necessarily need a light in every closet? I mean, there are just so many code requirements now that are driving up the cost of building that I think we could remove and get out of the way of industry to build these housing complexes. I also think, we only have to look as far as Brunswick. They built multiple large buildings that were for affordable housing, for workforce housing, and they have been bogged down and plagued by this border crisis. And all of that housing has been filled with asylum seekers. And for a Mainer, a working Mainer who wants to live in one of those buildings, they have to pay $2,300 a month to live there when asylum seekers are living there rent-free for 2 years, not paying for anything.
Thank you. Mr. Lauzon.
Yes, thank you. One of the things that I'm hearing as I'm talking to voters in Sanford is that out-of-state speculators are buying up single-family homes, and it's making it very, very difficult for young families to make their first home purchase. So, you've only got, with the existing real estate, a set amount. So, that's been called to my attention. The other thing is the high cost of rent is pretty steep compared to what the job market can provide. So I agree that we need to cut some red tape to make builders and speculators more interested in making a profit by building new homes and affordable housing projects. So, I mean, I'm agreeing with pretty much everybody on this panel that it is a big problem. If you cannot bring in any big employer without a guarantee that their employees are going to actually be able to afford to live within a reasonable distance of their employment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, question number 3. And Mr. Lanigan, you'll be starting us off here. Oh, yes, okay. All right, yeah, the 30-second sign is just a warning. You have that much time left to finish your answer and any points you wish to make. Okay, question number 3 with Mr. Lanigan starting us off with this one. Maine utility ratepayers subsidize solar energy production. A change in the way this subsidy is calculated has some companies feeling the pinch and, in some cases, feeling fearful that they may need to close. As reported in media outlets, the owner of one small manufacturing company says his utility costs will increase by $6,000 per month. To a lesser degree, residential utility customers also see an increase. Do you believe these costs are reasonable? If so, why? If not, what will you do about the situation if elected?
Thank you, Sean. A huge issue for Mainers, especially in our rural areas like this, and businesses. It is outrageous right now to get electricity in Maine. We are spending so much subsidizing these solar farms that are going up on everybody's property. The taxpayers are supplementing them. So you have $1 of energy coming from oil. It costs ratepayers $1.80 to get $1 back out of the solar. And we're paying that, no matter how you split it. So we need to change our policy and get back to the basics for Mainers that work. We need an equal spend. We need to natural gas, hydro. We need oil. We need to go across it. We can just not flip a switch and go to all solar. And I don't know about you, but the the landscape is changing in Maine too. We're literally making beautiful areas look like just big industrial plants in the middle of farms. It's I don't know what we're thinking about, but we need to, as a legislator, stop supplementing those and making Mainers supplement those solar farms and those wind farms. Just wait till you see the coast of Maine in the next couple of years. You're going to wonder how the seagulls are even getting to shore. So thank you so much, and I hope that we can do this, because I have a small ranch and I spend about $450 a month for electricity for my family. It's nuts. It's almost my mortgage. Try to do that when I'm elderly. I don't even know if I can afford to stay in Maine, and I really want to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lanigan. Ms. Bell?
I too agree that we should do something about the solar farms. I've been on both sides. Well, first of all, my electric bill was $835 a couple of months ago. It skyrocketed. It more than doubled in the heat of the summer. We do live in a brand new house, so I know that it's properly insulated and the air conditioning works well. It was just expensive. It's no fun having to pay $800 for electricity. And I've also been on the side where we own 96 acres, and the solar farms contact us all the time. They call. I guess they do a Google search of my land and say, hey, there's some land we can use. And they want me to sign contracts so that they can come and put a solar farm on my land and make my land look bad, like he said, and then pay me for that, but yet I don't get to tap into that solar. I still have to pay my electric bill. So there's a problem with the whole situation, and I do believe that I would work hard to help that situation and to turn it around so that Mainers can afford their electric bills and that we're not paying for somebody else's solar farm. I don't like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Ms. Mastracchio?
Thank you. So climate change is real. I think we need to reduce our reliance on solar power. On fossil fuels, and there's wind power, there's solar power, there's a lot of things. We have a climate council that the governor is really invested in reducing and helping us with climate change. Anybody that doesn't think it's real, talk to blueberry farmers, talk to any farmer in the state of Maine. I have traveled, talked to potato farmers. They're Republicans, and they agree it is real. Things have changed. So there was a bill, Senator Harrington had a bill. I think it was, I'm trying to remember which, LD 1465, it was defeated, and it was about eliminating, basically, net billing, which wasn't fair to the businesses that invested under the current law. So LD 1986 was a bill that the governor actually signed, which will look at that and try to see if the effects of net billing are having such a detrimental effect on ratepayers that we should do something about it. So I am totally in favor of that. I think that we had to do what we did in the beginning with the net billing because we needed to try to get people to invest in Maine. We had a governor for a long time who thought solar power was just a game, and there's still people that believe that. I don't think that anybody that's looking at the storms that we've been having and the summer that we've been having over the last few years can say that climate change is not real and we need to do something about it. I actually think that that's our biggest problem for the future.
Thank you very much. Ms. Menendez Hall?
Certainly solar is a complicated issue. And I do know there's been work done to take a look at net energy billing and see what kind of impacts it's having on the ratepayer. From an electricity perspective, the largest impact, in my opinion, of what homeowners are experiencing when they're paying their electricity bill is coming from supply. It's not the delivery portion of their bill. While that does see a slight increase or an increase, it's much less significant than the supply portion of the bill, which I'm not going to go into all the different nuances of how that works because I could probably take up quite a bit of time going on about that. But what I do agree with is the impacts of climate change and how that is changing the entire energy grid and infrastructure. From a forester's angle, I see what the more frequent storms are doing and the investments that the company, Central Maine Power and others like Versant are making to make a more reliable grid, which does ultimately tie into those solar farms as well. But With that climate change and storm changes also comes significant changes to our forests and our natural resources with tree pests and diseases, and it's something that I'm working on every single day and trying to figure out how we can make those improvements on so there is a lesser impact to our communities with all of that.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fredericks?
Our energy costs are unmanageable for the Mainers, for the average citizen. There's no debate within them about is it a supply or delivery cost factor. It's just too damn high. The solar farms, these are outside of Maine. These are large companies that come to Maine, and they look for property, and they create a fleet of solar panels that we have subsidized for them because of past legislation. So on the backs of the average Mainer, we're paying for these companies to land these big boathouses of solar panels. And a few other things that we haven't addressed, and that's these solar panels each year, they decrease in the amount of energy they produce, and then at the end of their 20-year life, it has to be retired, and to retire solar panels is like retiring hazmat materials. Now those companies are long gone. I think it's a big problem. A net billing issue needs to be addressed so that it's not on the backs of Mainers that we're allowing these fat cats to come in and land solar panels in our backyards, and we get hit with, we're getting whacked with the higher and higher energy costs. It just doesn't make sense. So we got to go back to the table and iron that net billing out.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harrington?
So I will be very blunt. Yeah, I voted against this law, the net energy billing law program, when it became law in 2019. I have supported numerous measures to reform it because it needs to be reformed. This isn't an issue of climate change or anything like that. We've had numerous pieces of legislation that have sought to reform the way the reimbursement and the way the tariff program is run. Even the Maine's public advocate, a Democrat-appointed, very strong environmentalist, agrees we must change the way the reimbursements are done. And basically, if you look at the ISO New England grid, at any one time, despite all these solar panels going up everywhere across the state, it's never more than a few percentage points of the entire grid. Meanwhile, about 70% of our grid is not funded by, but fueled by natural gas. And Maine's net energy billing program is tied to the cost of natural gas because it's tied to the cost of the standard offer. That is what my bill sought to change. That is what numerous bills sought to change. It's a $220 million a year problem, creating these stranded costs from the standard offer rate to cover the reimbursement program. And I would just say there's very few businesses thriving in Maine, and the solar developers are one of them because it's a guaranteed windfall profit on the backs of Maine ratepayers. It must be reformed. Everyone out there is feeling it, and I would vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Mr. Lazan?
Okay, yeah, thank you. I mean, it is, there are some crazy policies out there, and I really need to point out that CMP and every other grid operator, most of them, particularly CMP, is a power carrier. They're not a power generator. So what they're doing is they're taking in power sources, transforming them, and then, supplying their own grid. So it's insane to think that if somebody puts solar panels on their own property, on their roof or whatever, I mean, the voters that I've talked to and the family members that I've known, some of them have actually eliminated their monthly electric bill by, the net metering. So, no pun intended, this is a huge disconnect. So this is something that needs to be ironed out. And, again, I've told many voters there's no difference between a railroad and a power grid. The only thing that's different is the absence of tracks. Everything else is the same. So there are profit margins that are being looked at by all sides, but there's no question about it. We are on the road to weaning ourselves away from traditional fossil fuel energy production. I mean, the writing is on the writing is on the wall. Other countries like Germany have been doing this for decades. Thank you.
Okay, and to bring question 3 across the finish line, Ms. Kidder.
Could you please repeat the question?
Absolutely, here goes. Maine utility ratepayers subsidize solar energy production. A change in the way this subsidy is calculated has some companies feeling the pinch and, in some cases, feeling fearful that they may need to close. As reported in media outlets, the owner of one small manufacturing company says his utility costs will increase by $6,000 a month. To a lesser degree, residential utility customers also see an increase. Do you believe these costs are reasonable? If so, why? And if not, what will you do about the situation if elected?
They're not acceptable, but I can also tell you that if you do join the solar farms, your electric bill will go down, and it will help our environment, and climate change is definitely real. And if you don't believe it, ask anybody who's in Florida today. It's just going to get worse, and we really, it's a bitter pill to take, and we need to do something to help folks with their electric bill, but it seems to me, from what I've seen, that if you do join and do solar, your bill does come down. And yes, I understand that it is everyone in the state of Maine that is helping my bill go down. I super appreciate it, believe you me. But I think somehow we all need to do this. And it's not an easy solution. No way.
Thank you very much for your answers, all of you.
And we'll move on to question 4, which might be a little less intense than some of them. Maybe. Ms. Bell, there'll be a question on the ballot next month that asks voters if Maine should change its flag from the current one that bears the state coat of arms to a new one a new old one, that features the image of a pine tree and a star. Should we change our flag? Please provide reasons for your answer.
Wow. Well, when I moved to this state, I bought a flag, and I still have that flag because I loved the Maine flag. I'm not for or against. I really don't have an opinion on that. I think the flag we have is for the working man and the working class. I personally, and I don't know anything about my fellow Republicans, I don't know how they even think on this, but I personally believe that we should just leave it the way it is. I like the flag we have.
Ms. Mastracchio.
Thank you. For me, it's not about which flag you like best. I'll be honest, when I saw that bill and they were debating it for way too long, on the floor of the House, I sat there and said, seriously? We have a whole lot more important stuff to work on. And I did agree with, first of all, I would have voted against it because I didn't think it was an appropriate thing for the legislature to decide on. And I voted to send it to the people, see what they think. I had an argument with my husband about this because I said, it's going to cost us a whole lot of money to change all those flags. But you know what? If the people of Maine want to vote for that flag, then within that is implicit that they want to spend that money. I do think they have to realize there's a whole lot of flags that are going to have to be changed. So I say vote the way you want, but just know what the ultimate outcome will be. There will be a fiscal note to that.
Ms. Hall.
I appreciate Anne Marie bringing that point up because, certainly from my perspective, it's one of those things that I kind of neutral. It could go either way. And it seems like if the people of Maine want to vote on that, then that's fine. I didn't even think of the fiscal component of it. However, as a forester, I'm a little bit more biased towards the pine tree. So that's my personal opinion.
Ms. Fredericks.
Thank you. My position was I voted to send it to the people to decide. My point is I'm against changing the flag because of the cost of finding all the state locations and having to pull down the old flag, creating a new one, having positions paid for to go out and put up the new flags up. All the state paper would have to be changed. It's a big endeavor. It's a big, costly endeavor. It's not just the cost, it's the timeline of personnel to get out there and do all that work. When I do believe we have much more important priorities. The cost of living is just soaring. Our Mainers are struggling to survive, and we're likely to spend the money on the wrong thing at this time. Now, if we had the surplus given 2 years ago, our budget was in excess of millions, hundreds of millions. That would have been an opportune time to consider this change. And many of us tried to sway the legislature to give back the money back to the people, and that didn't move far at all. It was all spent. But that would have been the opportunity to address things of desire versus needs. I don't know that we need the flag to be changed at this time. It may be a desire, and then the discussion goes further into, if it's a desire, do you have the money to do it? Do you have the personnel to do it? Do you have a plan to do it?
Thank you. Mr. Harrington.
I'd start by saying I think this is a fantastic use of the referendum process, and say that I voted to send it to the people. I think this is the perfect thing for people to be voting on, not substantive policy, but simple measures like this. I would say the historian in me probably leans toward supporting the change, but also understand the fiscal implications. But I hope at the very least, having heard this legislature after legislature, year after year, that regardless of the outcome, this issue is put to bed for a while at least. Thank you.
Mr. Lauzon.
Yeah, I, for one, am really relieved that the legislature's not going to have to make a decision on this. But I was assured by the Secretary of State's office that there really wouldn't be a cost to making a change, because as the flags retire, in other words, from what I understand, is there's not going to be a demand by the state that everybody has to change the flag. It's going to be that the flag can die a death of attrition. You know, you don't have to change the flag. The only redeeming thing that I heard was that the idea that a 6-year-old could easily draw this flag is probably the only redeeming thing. And the other thing was that the current flag matches and duplicates many other states, you know, with the color, design, and all that. So I have no opinion either way. And again, let me just end by saying I am so glad that this is going out for a referendum. Thank you.
Ms. Gitter.
I believe I agree with everybody else here. I really don't know which way I'm going to go on that referendum, and I'm glad that the legislature sent it to the people, because that's, yeah. And I'm glad to hear that we get to use whichever flag and wait until we need to replace the state flag before we have to put up a new one that's completely different. I'm sure there will be some costs associated with changing the stationery. So part of me is leaning towards keeping everything just the way it is from the cost point of view.
Mr. Lanigan.
Thank you, Tammy. That's such a great question. But it kind of loops back to what we were just talking about before, the previous question. Maine is a net positive carbon state, one of the only states in the whole United States that actually absorbs more carbon than it actually produces. So Mr. Luzon mentioned Germany. That's a country. We have 1.3 million people here. We're not going to make climate change happen in Maine. Okay, Maine isn't going to do it. Now, if we want to sell those carbon credits to other states and bring some revenue in, I could see that happening, but there's no talk of that. Now, the pine tree represents to me, that's why I wanted to bring it up, is that absorption of carbon. So I appreciate, like I said, the question. And I just feel like this flag, the whole debate, we had 80 bills left on the table this last legislature, but we discussed this for like 2 or 3 days. This absorbs so much time, so many resources of Mainers just to figure out if we were going to change the flag. Not get Mainers into housing, not lower their electricity costs, not all the important things that we've already previously talked about. So I don't care really about the flag. Like, I love the flag that we have. This one's cool. I think the state should trademark it and then let businesses sell it and make a little piece off of it. That's how I look at it. It's just another thing to make money off of for tourism. But why go through this when we have so many other pressing issues? It seems ridiculous to me, and it's one of the things that I probably created all these gray hairs on my beard this last session. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. For our next question, we're going to ask you your thoughts on changing the state bird. No. All right. No, we're back to serious subjects now.
Cardinal.
Yeah, that's it. We don't want to start another fight. Okay, question number 5, and the last one before we take a break. Some hospital systems and independent hospitals in Maine are cutting back on services, particularly in rural areas, because of costs and staffing constraints. While York County is in a better position than others throughout the state, we do have a shortage of primary care physicians. Should the Maine legislature help resolve these issues? If so, how? If not, why? And Ms. Mastracchio, you get this one first.
Thank you. I serve on the Health Coverage, Insurance, and Financial Services Committee, and it is a problem, and it's a problem more in rural Maine. We've been working on this issue for a long time. There's a lot of different things that we're doing to try to make sure that people get the health care that they need. There's even a bill to have a medical school at the state university so that we could train doctors at a lower cost than they currently have to incur when they go to medical school. We've really tried to, in licensing, to streamline the licensing process for healthcare professionals coming to Maine. I'm going to just say this once again, it is about housing. We have people coming to Maine who want to help us with this healthcare crisis. If they can't find a place to live, that's a problem. We have a lot of visiting nurses coming. That's driving up the cost of health care. So we need to train as many people as we can in our own state who can stay here. The other thing that we are working on is paramedicine. And paramedicine could take a place between visiting health nurses who have trouble. We don't have enough of visiting health nurses, and no care for people who need care when they are released either from the hospital or from rehab. And we have a pilot program in Sanford, and I was part of a task force that looked at how we're going to pay for that and how we're going to help communities like Sanford so that the taxpayers aren't funding that whole process. So we are working on this process, and we should.
Thank you very much. Ms. Menendez Hall?
I'm glad Anne Marie went before me on this one. So as I've said before this evening, and I'll say a number of times, I am not an expert in everything, but I know trees very well. So, certainly I think your county is better positioned than other areas in the state of Maine in terms of access to primary care physicians and services. But certainly it is an issue in York County and, the state in terms of having those shortages and there being very long lead times to get medical services that people need. If I was in a position where I could work on policy to improve this or find a better way through the problem, me not being educated in this field, I would want to talk to the subject matter experts, see what they are learning from their peers in other states, see what they've gained in experience of, or just see what they have for ideas of what would work. They know their industry better than I do, and I would say probably most people who are currently serving in the legislature who don't have a background in the medical field. So certainly I would want to lean on them for their expertise and see what improvements could be made.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Fredericks?
So I am a nurse practitioner, and I know the healthcare industry. I know that providers are leaving the industry. Healthcare is not easy, especially given that we've had mass immigration in our country. It makes it more difficult, language, cultural. There's all kinds of nuances that make work more difficult for that healthcare provider. That's number one. Number two, there are fewer and fewer providers going into primary care. If you can get someone into healthcare, they usually take a track that is more lucrative, anesthesiology or surgery. But Maine is working on it. The question is there anything Maine could be doing to lure more providers in? When you talk about Fort Kent, Caribou, northern Maine, there's a paucity of nurses, doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, pharmacists, you name it. And the Health and Human Services Committee, which I am a member of, we talk about this and we offer solutions. First of all, providers that decide to provide in rural areas, they have debt reduction for their educational costs. We have incentivized pay. We have stipends. You've heard about housing being a problem. What you haven't heard is childcare is a problem. When you invite professionals to come into our state, not only is it housing, but they're looking to see that their family is going to be cared for, and education, that we have slots in those schools. So we are currently looking into this. I think nationally we have a problem. Our state we have a problem. Rural health care itself is a problem. And it just needs more time and attention.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harrington?
Well, I would start by asking, why many doctors don't look to come to Maine. And I don't think we have to look very far. If we look at our top overall tax rate, we're one of the highest taxed states in the nation. Our neighbor to the south is much lower than us. So if you're just looking at just regionally, why would a primary care physician move to Maine versus New Hampshire? So immediately you have that financial burden to get over. But I mean, many other of those issues that have been mentioned prior, I won't mention them again, but we certainly have an issue that we need to address with primary care physicians. I actually sponsored and passed legislation this year to allow the PUC to allow more telecommunications providers to provide low-income service, particularly to help rural Maine and to help those folks receive telehealth and other obviously 911, but just moving toward telehealth to allow cheaper primary care access. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lazan?
Yes, I have a lot of family members that are medical professionals, and the one thing that I hear constantly is the pay disparity. All right, so medical professionals that are practicing medicine in Maine earn significantly less than their counterparts in other states like Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut. So that is something that needs to be addressed. And I know we're talking money, but it is an issue. And the quality of care in Maine is fantastic. I myself experienced open heart surgery a year ago, a little over a year ago, and the care was absolutely fantastic. But it was a heartbreak knowing that the nurses and other medical professionals that were providing this excellent treatment were grossly underpaid, in my opinion. And so that's kind of where I'm going to leave it. I think if you want to attract more quality medical professionals into the great state of Maine, you're going to have to figure out a way to compensate them on par with other states. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kidder?
I've been listening to everybody here, and I tend to agree with pretty much everything. I do know that we need more affordable housing to attract I've heard that some medical professionals have tried to come to our state, and that they, even with the pay, they can't afford the housing that's available. So either the housing has to come down in price or the salaries have to go up. And I would say that we need to look at our insurance companies and find out why people in Maine, medical professionals, are not getting compensated the same they are in other states. Is it a health insurance problem? And I think also some of the costs associated with medical care of having to bill that many different insurance companies makes it difficult for a medical professional to work in Maine. I have a feeling it's probably the same in other states as well, but I've heard that there are over 30 different insurance companies they have to bill. That's ridiculous.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lanigan?
Thank you, Sean. Well, really, in Maine, we have one insurance company to bill, and that's Maine Care, because we love giving out Maine Care to everybody that we can, and that's our welfare cliff, because we have this straight line where you just fall off and you cannot promote yourself and build your family up. You have to teeter in between what income you're able to make and what income that you can make so you can maintain your benefits. And when we cross that line, it's so expensive to make that jump that it's not beneficial for people to do it. They'll stay where they are. And that's what we've done. We've always put a ceiling on people in Maine. And now we need to lift that ceiling up, and we need to let people rise with the tide, like I said before. It's really sad to see when someone's offered a promotion say they start at Dunkin' Donuts and they get an offer for a promotion. Well, yeah, maybe they're going to make $3,000 to $5,000 extra a year before taxes. But we're so taxed, so over everything. Everything's so expensive here that they can't afford to lose their Maine Care, so they just stay where they are. And that's sad. So we need to make a program that works for everybody to lift up and allow themselves to grow in Maine. Because all we're doing is our biggest export is not blueberries, it's not lobster, it's our youth. Our youth is our biggest export. Our youth do not stay in Maine and do not create these practices, do not pursue their careers here because the opportunity is being taken from them. It's so expensive for them to stay here. Trust me, I have some in my basement if anybody needs some. But it's tough. It's tough. And I don't know if up north we have an open border right now. We could actually maybe use Canada to help supplement some of the more rural areas up north. Sorry, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bell?
I could never remember that. Just being a candidate, I don't have a lot of information about this particular thing. I do know, however, that my husband was in the hospital in January for 3 days, and not one of his nurses was from the state of Maine. They were all traveling nurses. And I found that interesting that we had to have nurses come from somewhere else, and that is probably a great cost to our state. I don't know how that works, but I found that interesting that none of them were from Maine. And then also we've received great care in the state of Maine, coming from a different state. We have no complaints about the health care system anywhere around us. We've always had good care, but I do see that it's hard to get a PCP. When we needed PCP doctors, we waited for months and months and months with no doctor to go to. We resorted to doctoring ourselves for colds and stuff. And there was a day when you could just pick up the phone and the doctor was like, yeah, come on in. And those days are gone. So there is a great problem. And I would be willing, if I'm elected, I would be willing to work with everybody to find a solution for this problem.
Excellent. Thank you, all of you, for answering that question. And that is the halfway mark of tonight. So how are we doing for time?
We've been 70 minutes.
Well, not bad. Okay. All right. So how about a 5 to 10 minute break, and then we'll come back. We'll do the second half. All right. Thank you.
Might even be shorter.
That's a first. I am open to anything. Who wants to keep going? It's unanimous. All right.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is this, well, I guess first, can I ask a clarifying question before?
Yeah.
Like, in local races, like specifically this race, or just in general? It's a great question, and I appreciate it. So personally, I have not been impacted by, I would say, anything in opposition to myself. I have seen, a postcard that I've put out, so I knew what the content in that was. But and in general, I think in the House Senate races here, I haven't seen any activity in either direction. Mostly, what I've been seeing is certainly the presidential race, and not so much ads per se on TV, but a lot of the signage out now that everyone's putting signs out. And certainly the Austin Terrio, Jared Golden ads are just about everywhere. And I'll get into this into my closing statement, but I've never been overly political, and what drives me nuts about politics is the ads and the back and forth and what always seems like apparent mudslinging. And it's hard to determine, for an uninformed voter who is just doing some research on their own, what's real, what's not, what's being twisted. It's confusing. I've never liked it, and that's always why I've kind of stayed away from anything political, because it just seems like a lot of loud noise and rhetoric, and it's just not very productive. So long-winded answer, I guess, but yeah, for me, I haven't seen anything. I know for me, my intention in my race is to just keep my head down, stay in my own lane, focus on myself. I don't believe in bringing people down to raise myself up. So that's my answer.
I think it was nicely said. Her last statement was she doesn't have to bring someone down to raise herself up. Very nicely said. I think politics has become so ugly. There's a lot of money in it. There's a lot of money that goes into ads, radio, commercials, big money. And things can be said about you that you have nothing to do with. Last term, there was a mailer that went out that said I had something to do with dirty water, or I was for it, against it. I had no idea about the topic and why it was being even associated with my name. And furthermore, I didn't even know that Sanford was concerned about dirty water being the issue. So it just astonishes me about just what anyone can say in the political arena, and oftentimes people believe it to be true. But on the candidate's good statement, I wish we were all voted in on the merits of our knowledge, skills, and abilities, not because we like ketchup or mustard. It should be on what we think is within our reach to achieve as an individual on the basis of the greater good of our community. I just think that politics has become ugly.
Well, maybe I'm just living in an absolute vacuum, but I haven't really seen any ads on local races. I think I've received one postcard in the mail for a candidate up here, and nothing else really. But to go on to say, certainly at the federal level, I am just always astonished at the just outright lies that are thrown back and forth, and certainly can't wait till after Election Day to see them end.
I think actually throughout York County, it's very boring. On the federal level, however, it's like it's an all-out war. So absolutely respectful with all the campaigns that I've seen throughout York County. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I haven't received anything negative in my mailbox, and I certainly have not authorized anything that negative to be mailed. So, and on the local level, I think we're doing pretty good. We're civil. On the federal level, I'm not quite as sure about the civil part, but I fortunately have been paying more attention to my own campaign than anybody else's.
Again, some really important issues out there. Back to our healthcare one, I'd like to talk about that just for a second since I have 90 seconds. One of the other issues when I brought up MaineCare is MaineCare pays a lower reimbursement fee to our doctors in our hospitals, and it makes it more expensive for them to operate. So if we had more private insurance companies, there'd be a higher reimbursement mark, and that would help out. So I didn't sum it up because I got the time sign. I have not a negative thing to say about Patty. I think she's a wonderful woman. That's one thing I do like about Maine races, I guess, is kind of like we could go out for coffee. I was going to give her a ride to Augusta and turn in her papers to run against me. You know, I was, you know, I was, right? I mean, yep, so I offered. And I'm not authorizing anything. I will say that because they're coming from someone, and it's not going to be Patty, it's going to be some political pack, is I believe in women's rights. I don't like dirty water. I don't believe in aliens and UFOs, and I'm a nice guy, regardless of what you guys read. So I'm just kind of preempting what might come in the mail. So, but I haven't seen anything nasty yet, and I hope no one does it on my part for Patty because there's no reason to. I'd rather us win the race on the merits of the candidate, not the the disgust of a campaign. So thank you so much.
This race, I said I'm going to run a clean race. It's just going to be what I can do. I'm in it to win it, and I'm just going to do what I feel necessary for me. I haven't authorized anything that other than just what I've had made myself. I was on vacation for 2 days this week, and I came home to a flyer on my counter that had my face on it, and I was like, wow. And somebody mailed them out for me. It was not endorsed by me, but it still was not nasty or ugly, and I have no intentions of doing that to my opponent or anybody else. So I'm just here to enjoy. Thank you.
I haven't seen any ads. I haven't seen, the only things that have been mailed out have been the things that I've mailed out. I know that there are, because you can find out what money's been proposed to be spent or has been spent, and I know there will be negative ads there by outside groups. I've never run a campaign that has been anything but about me, because I'm the important person here. Sorry. So I'm happy to talk about what I've done. I don't need to talk about my opponent.
So first, I think it should be said that our hearts still go out to the losses in Lewiston, not only those lives lost, but those many lives affected. The community is still grieving. I believe Maine has a fine gun law, and we just need to, and what makes me say that? Since the Lewiston incident, more of the yellow flag, there's been more incidents whereby individuals have contacted local law enforcement to address issues of an individual that had a gun that possibly shouldn't have, the scrutiny over that individual. There are more and more calls to public safety to go and address individuals that may or may not be suitable to carry a gun. So I think that's a wonderful display that our current law does work. There's been a big uptick in this. I also think that it's been said more than once in regards to the Lewiston tragedy that mental health is not well addressed. You know, we all put our heads in the sand. Mental health issues affect our families, communities, everybody, and there's still such a stigma that it's not discussed openly nor addressed quickly. We hope that that individual will stabilize on their own when in fact it needs intervention and treatment. I think this has been a call from everyone that mental health is certainly key to the tragedy that occurred in Lewiston.
I would start by saying, obviously, our condolences still go out to those families that were affected by that event. I think if we look at the facts of that case, it was widespread failure by the government to prevent that incident, some of which was from at the federal level, which is being addressed by Senator Collins in numerous pieces of other legislation to look at stemming the federal and the U.S. Army's portion of that. At the state level, as a police officer myself, I can tell you when the new yellow flag law came into effect, we got almost no training on it. It was a quick blurb, along with the 20 other laws that the legislature passed that year. And that's one big issue. It didn't get the attention it deserved because every 2 years we elect a bunch of legislators, and they all want to change how law enforcement fundamentally does its job. And that was a prime example. That law didn't get the attention it was deserving of. With regards to do we need any new gun laws, no, I don't think we do. In fact, I think we need to repeal several that we passed last year that I believe are unconstitutional, such as the 72-hour waiting period. We need to look at the crux of the issue, which is mental health, and we did that. We passed bipartisan legislation that threw a lot of money at mental health, and I think that was the step in the right direction. But I don't think we need any more unconstitutional gun laws. Thank you.
Yeah, Senator, that was very well said. The whole concept of making the public aware that there is something to do when they know that there's an individual that shouldn't have access to firearms or anything else dangerous is critical. So if anything, if we do anything, it should be to enhance the idea that there are already safety measures on the books. There already are tools that can be used, and making sure that the public is aware of it and not intimidated to actually engage in that. So I think the Lewiston thing, as horrible as it was, I think it opened up a lot of eyes and created an opportunity for policymakers in the state of Maine to enhance that and say there is something that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kidder?
I drove through that. It was, I still have PTSD from driving through that day. I left China, Maine, and was bringing a student back to her dorm house in Lewiston, and managed to get her to her dorm house just in time for it to all go into lockdown. And then got over to Auburn and spent the night with friends in Auburn in lockdown, making sure that we were still safe. I agree that we have laws on the books that we need to enforce, and we need to educate the public and law enforcement educate. As Mr. Harrington has just said, they did not get the training they needed. We need to make sure they get the training they needed. And we need to put more emphasis on mental health. The system broke down, and it let him down, and it let everybody down in Lewiston and across our state. Our rose-colored glasses got broken that day. It can happen here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lanigan.
Thank you. Could you repeat the question? And also, I have some people from home saying that they can't hear you on your mics. I don't know if...
Both of us?
Okay, cool. See? Just looking out for you guys.
Rare instance in which nobody can hear me. Okay. Repeat the question you said, right? Okay.
Yes, please.
This month makes 1 year since the mass shooting that killed 18 people and wounded many others in Lebanon. The tragedy brought home to our, Lewiston. Lewiston. The tragedy brought home to Maine the ongoing national debate over gun rights and gun control. Are you all set with the gun laws that Maine currently has in place, or do you think more or fewer controls are needed? Please explain your answer.
I'm actually very disappointed with what the legislator did this last session with this. Seemed like we made a couple knee-jerk reactions, again, taking up a ton of time and really only hurting Maine businesses and Maine people that live here. I have two gun shops in my district, run right here in Springvale, and then on point out in Newfield. Literally, when their customers now can go 5 minutes down the road and buy the same gun and bring it back to Maine. And if I want to buy a gun in Maine, I have to wait 72 hours now. I mean, you just eliminated their business. I mean, literally. So what good was it? What good? I can drive. If I'm that determined to do something awful with a gun, or a car, or a knife, or a bat, whatever it is, I'm going to do it. And so I'll drive the 5 minutes extra to New Hampshire. I won't pay any sales tax on it, another bonus, right? So the bad guy's getting tax-free, and he's getting it quicker than he can just buy it in Maine. So now the Maine company is actually going to recognize that person buying the gun. They're probably going to have some sort of community tie to that person buying the gun. They might be able to actually step in and not sell it to them. So I think we're detrimental in at least our border communities. We really just went 10 years, 15, 20 years backwards on this issue. Instead of finding out real solutions, it's just like, oh, let's do this. This is going to be nice and easy. Let's do it. And that's the thing that we need to stop doing up there. Just because one party's in control, let's stop making it easy. Let's work across party lines and see what the best idea is, and not just what's easy to do in our party. And that's what's broken in Augusta, and I hope that we can change that this next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bell?
Thank you. My heart goes out to all the people in Lewiston that lost a loved one that day, and including the shooter. He had mental illness. And it wasn't the gun that killed the people, it was the shooter that had the gun. And we did have knee-jerk reactions to the gun laws. And we need to be educated, and he needed the help that he needed to get so that he wouldn't do the things that he did. So our mental illness capabilities are failing us, and we need to make sure that people are educated. And a lot of good people have guns. They're not criminals. And I'm going to tell you, no matter what law you put into place, the criminal will always find a way to get a gun. He will go to New Hampshire. He will go to Massachusetts. He will go to any other state and bring it back to our state. So we need to educate, and take care of mental illness.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mastracchio?
Thank you. I'm just going to say that not every person that has mental health issues picks up a gun and does something with it. And I really am getting to the point where I'm kind of tired of hearing that if we address every mental health issue, then we won't have anybody pick up a gun and do something with it that they shouldn't. Sanford was one of the communities that did utilize the yellow flag law long before Lewiston. We had the staff, and we had the will to do it because we had a mental health unit that knew that it was important and took the time so that we could take guns out of the hands of people who might not only harm other people, but most likely themselves. I am really concerned that gun deaths in the United States have now surpassed car accidents as the #1 cause of deaths in the ages of 1 to 17. We do have a gun problem. We have too many guns. I did vote for a 72-hour waiting period. I think responsible gun owners are happy to wait 72 hours. I don't think that it's a bad law. I'm glad that it passed. I voted for it. I'll just tell you that I think that we need to put some efforts into getting federal legislation in this area, because to try to do this on a state-by-state basis just is not successful when you can walk from one state that has one laws and another state that has another. Guns are the problem. There are many things that we can do, lock boxes, there's things that we can require, and maybe we need to look at them, because I want to reduce suicides and gun deaths in children and domestic violence.
Thank you very much. And to finish with question number 7, Ms. Menendez Hall, please.
There is not much that hasn't already been said, to be honest with this question. So I'm going to go, I'll do a little bit of a spin in a direction. I have no issue with the yellow flag law. I wouldn't make any changes to that. And this is where, as I'm registered as a Democrat, but really I'm more of a moderate, and this is where I differ a little bit, and I have my own opinions, and I'm not afraid to voice them. I'm not saying I oppose the 72-hour hold. I do think I have some concerns with it, and I think there was maybe some things that it's hard for me to cast judgment on the legislator. I wasn't there. I don't know what the conversations were. I'm going to give you my personal experience. I think, as been set up here, someone who is motivated to obtain a weapon of any kind, firearm, knife, what be it, whether it's they're going to inflict something on themselves or do harm to somebody else, they will find a way to do it. Why mental health is so important to me is a little under 2 years ago, a best friend of mine committed suicide by a firearm. It was something I never saw coming. It was something that the people around him never saw coming. He was a lifelong hunter, lifetime responsible gun owner. The 72 hours would not have saved him. And I venture there's probably other people out there, same situation. So that is my spin on it, but yeah, I could go for a while, but yeah.
Tough subject. Thank you very much, all of you, for your answers and your candor. Tammy, question number 8.
And I think this one goes to you first, Mr. Harrington. Many families here at home and throughout the state are working hard to make ends meet as the cost of living increases. Is Maine doing enough to provide tax relief to residents? What more steps for tax relief, if any, would you advocate for if elected?
Well, I think we need to bring back the property tax stabilization that the majority let get repealed last year. I think that program had its flaws, but there was no willingness to try to fix it, and the proverbial baby went out with the bathwater sort of thing. And that program that was set to stabilize the property taxes of Maine seniors got repealed, and I hope we can see a renewed effort to bring that back in the next legislature. There are numerous other things I think we can do about cost of living, and energy being one of them. It affects us on all levels. Again, repealing and replacing the net energy billing program would dramatically reduce our energy costs in this state that you're feeling, not only in your electricity bill, but also at the grocery store, because that small increase that you see in your energy bill to a corporation like Hannaford is millions of dollars, and we are feeling it on all fronts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lauzon?
Yes, good question. Having been a federal lobbyist, my instincts always go towards revenue sharing particularly on, from the federal end of anything. My philosophy has always been, if Maine doesn't take a federal grant or a federal potential subsidy, I can, trust me, Massachusetts will. I think it's really important to understand that there are many federal grants out there for the taking, but you have to ask, and you have to really fight for them. Also, revenue sharing from the state of Maine too. A good example of that was the 55%, to offset some of the costs of public education. So there are things that can be done, but the big problem we have in Maine is we've got a lot of territory and a relatively small population to fund it. So that's the big challenge, I think. It's going to be a challenge, and it has been a challenge in the past, that how do you balance it? So nobody likes paying taxes, but it's a necessary evil. All right, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kidder.
For me, many years ago, I fought to get the legislation, or I should say the referendum, passed to make sure that the state paid 55% of the cost of education. And it took until our last legislative session to actually do that. I believe that we need to make sure that the state pays that 55% of education to help the towns keep the costs down to their property owners, their taxes. And revenue sharing on the state level, the towns need it. And I visited Shapley to talk with the select board at one of their last board meetings, and they need grants. They need help with their roads, they need help with their fire station, they need help with a lot of different things. So I feel that it's up to the state. The state has the ability to have many different avenues to get more revenue than any of the towns and cities have. They need to share it.
Thank you. Mr. Lanigan.
Can you repeat that question, please?
I can.
Thank you.
Many families here at home and throughout the state are working hard to make ends meet as the cost of living increases. Is Maine doing enough to provide tax relief to residents? What more steps for tax relief, if any, will you advocate for if elected?
Well, one of them I put in a bill, and it failed miserably due to lack of support from my Democrat friends, is eliminating income tax on overtime hours. I had one Democrat representative tell me that $4,000 to $5,000 really isn't that much money. Why are we sitting here talking about that? And I told them that it might be extra payments on their mortgage, kids' tuition. To a lot of families, that's a lot of money in Maine. That was one thing that baffled me. We're having a worker shortage, and we want to incentivize people to work, but then we penalize them by overtaxing them on their income that they earn. That's kind of funny. So people don't work the hours. They're like, oh, well, if I make it to 48 and a half, I'm not going to hit that tax bracket. So now a $52,000 a year police officer that's getting asked to work 80 hours a week, miss baseball games, miss time with their family, is getting taxed at $100,000, not by choice, instead of rewarding them and letting them just stay at the $52,000 income mark. There's so many things that we can do with our tax code that we're not doing, and it really is baffling to me. I just want to go back to our last thing with guns and stuff like that. There were 719 car deaths in Maine last year. Okay? We just defunded our highway bill. The Democrats said we had a bipartisan highway bill that we funded, and then this last session we defunded it. We're talking about gun deaths. There's 179 of them. Representative Mastracchio said mental health is not the end all. 156 of those gun deaths out of 179 were suicides. So I think we need to start addressing the real problem, stop just making up these things that just do not matter to Mainers, and get back to the basics and find out what hits home. So I just wanted to bring that point up. Thank you.
I do, as a middle-class working family, we do live on a budget, and we do try to make ends meet. And I know that we are taxed greatly in the state of Maine. Our property taxes went up again this year. My property taxes are actually more than my mortgage. We do have a little bit of land. So taxes in Maine are a little bit out of control, and I would like to work to remedy that. I know that the common income, Maine's overall tax burden is 10.74% of the common man's income. That's higher than California. And we're ranked 4th among the U.S. states in terms of tax burdens. That's a lot, I think, and I think that we should work hard to find a way to relieve the people.
Thank you. Ms. Mastracchio.
Thank you. Just want to comment that the property tax stabilization bill, though it sounded really good, was totally unsustainable. It cost us in the neighborhood of $50 million, and it was going to go up every single year. It would have eventually taken over every aspect of the budget. I think that when it passed, I'll just say, I was mayor. I looked through the list when the bills came out. I remember calling the city manager and saying, what the heck is this bill? It kind of slid through in a COVID session that I don't think ever got the actual scrutiny that it deserved, and it went through with a fiscal note that was not what I consider accurate. I have a real problem with not stating exactly what a fiscal note will be, even ongoing into the future, so that you can, there's a process by which both parties do this, where they say, oh, well, we'll just push that up into 25, 26, and then it won't appear in this year. Well, eventually you have to pay for that. I am very fiscally conservative for a Democrat. What we did do when we repealed that was we have 2 tax relief programs that were expanded. The property tax fairness credit, which currently allows eligible Mainers to take a $1,500 credit, has increased to $2,000. It loosens limits on the program in a way that allows the benefits to remain constant for a Mainer whose spouse passes away. And the state property tax deferral program is a lifeline loan program that covers the annual property tax bills of Maine seniors who are age 65 and older who cannot afford to pay them on their own. Basically, they kind of take a loan, the state pays them, and eventually they get back when the state gets it back when they sell the house.
Ms. Hall.
Well, again, this is where I'm going to say this is not my area of expertise. And at this point, I think I've completely lost track of the question, but I have the general gist enough to answer and say something. I work full-time. My husband works full-time. We have 2 kids. We definitely feel the cost of rising property taxes, which, we have our taxes escrowed, so that makes our mortgage go up. Groceries have gone up. My kids are getting older. They eat a heck of a lot more than they did when they were babies. We pay for childcare now. Even though my son's in kindergarten, I still pay for before and after care, and those costs go up every single year. So while I don't know what I would do in, tax sharing or whatever the question was at this point, I do recognize that this is a big concern for many people, not only in Sanford. I mean, it's a statewide concern. And again, I would want to do my due diligence in talking to the people who have more experience in these areas than I do to see what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. If we go with this option, what are the implications on the other side? Because certainly when you do one thing, there's going to be a reaction on the other side. So wanting to be well understood in all aspects of something before I put an opinion or a vote forward on something if I was in that position.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks.
So yes, I think it's dire that we have some tax relief. Maine ranks number 4 in the nation for overall taxation. That's income tax, sales tax, payroll tax, fuel tax, death tax, tax. So we're 4th in the nation for overall taxation, but yet we're 47th for income earned. We're 47th in the nation for how much money we bring in, but we're whacked up here on taxation. It's ripe for tax relief. And I think we should do what our neighbor state does, New Hampshire. Hampshire. They have the same population count. Their census 1.3 million, Maine 1.3 million. They're a rural state. We're a rural state. They have some urban areas. We have some urban. They can do it. It's not an evil that we should just expect. I believe we're overtaxed. And number one, it's not a swear word. We got to cut spending. Stop it. Knock it off. Do what you do at home. Stop spending. And then we should be starting to think about what are our critical needs versus our desires. What can we really pay for and what can't we? And stop taxing everybody. It's just too extreme.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your answers there. 2 to go. And I hope this next one doesn't steal any thunder from the closing statements you might have prepared, but here we go. To our incumbents here this evening, you are asking voters in our districts to stay the course and re-elect you. Why should they? To our challengers, you are asking voters in our districts to change course and choose you. Why should they? And for this one, we start with Mr. Lazon.
Okay, so that's a loaded question. Let me just say that as a labor guy, my big thing is working families. Anything that can increase wages, anything that can reduce taxes or make life easier for people that are trying to earn a living in Maine. So I'm a strong advocate for actually tax fairness so that everybody's paying the same, especially high-profit corporations that are exploiting their employees for their own, corporate gain. That's where I kind of think I differ from, from my opponent, is I'm really, really concerned about working families and fairness and pay equity. So that's probably what sets us apart. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kidder?
It's going to sound kind of strange, but Lucas and I agree on about half of the stuff. And so I do believe that I would be changing the course. I want to help working families in Maine. I too agree that the middle class and working families in Maine are paying too much in taxes. And I've been a tax preparer for 40 years, and I understand where you're all coming from when it comes to being taxed too much. And I feel that the way that we can help homeowners is with the making sure the state pays that 55% for education. And making sure that revenue sharing increases as it can, because our cities and towns need the extra help.
Excellent. Mr. Lanigan?
So, honestly, and nothing against all the candidates up here are wonderful people. I've known them for a while, except Ms. Hall there. But we can't afford not to have the Republicans win. Because what we can do as a Republican House is we can stop the unnecessary spending. That's all probably we'll be able to do this session, is stop the pen from swiping the bills. Because right now they just have an open checkbook and that money is yours. It's yours, the taxpayers of Maine, and they are just, you got your pockets out, the lint's falling, and they're looking for every nickel and dime just to spend it. They're not looking to cut costs. We didn't see any cost cutting. Now we're going to be, $1 billion short in revenue? Guess what that means? People's jobs. Guess what that means? Recession. That means negative for Mainers. We need to look ahead. We need to look to the future of Maine. We need to look in for our kids' future. We can't just spend because we got it. I mean, I used to do that with baseball cards, and they never panned out in my investment. So let's kind of slow down a little bit. Patty, one thing that I thank you for those nice words, but one thing I'm fearful if you get elected and you're up there is once you step into that Democrat caucus, they tell you how to vote, the Portland elites. They tell you what you can and can't vote for. If not, they're going to run someone against you. They'll take you off your committee. The nice thing about Republicans is we do not do that. We don't allow it. They're allowed to have your own voice for your own constituents. And I think that's the biggest difference that you'll see when you have a Republican-controlled House, is we will actually be representing the people, not the party. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lanigan. Ms. Bell?
I've been a pastor's wife for over 30 years. I've run a Christian school for over 15. I've worked with people that have a lot of money, millions, and I've worked with people that need to recover from an addiction. I'm a very compassionate person. I love what I do. I love people. As I've been knocking doors this summer, I've had great success and great connections with many people because they just see me as being real, and I am real. I believe the Bible, and I'm a conservative, and I'm going to always speak the truth because that's who I am. I want to bring fresh views to Augusta, maybe some good change. I want to work with people. I want to work with both parties. I'm not here to be angry at anybody. I just want to do what's best for the people of Maine. I am a people of Maine. Do I have a Southern accent? I do. You can take the girl out of the South, but you're not going to take it out of me. I've lived here for over 28 years. But I do love the people of Maine. Maine is our home. I've raised my family here, and I want to have tax relief. I want to help the people of Maine, and that's why you should vote for me.
Ms. Mastracchio?
Thank you. I don't think there's anybody up here who has more experience than I do in getting things done. And I happen to think that's what it's all about. So when my city manager calls me and says, you know, there's this bill and it's just going to do real damage and here's what it's going to do to Sanford, I bring that back to my caucus. And I resent the fact that there's somebody up here who actually said that we don't stand up to our caucus. That's the reason those bills weren't taken off the table on veto day, because we stood up and said, we're not going to do that. We're going to be fiscally responsible. Revenues are flattening. Let's see what happens in the next session. We can't spend money unless we know we're going to have it. I'll tell you the other difference between me and my opponent is that I believe in reproductive autonomy. And I'm going to fight for that because I think women should have the right to do what they want to do with their own bodies. I've voted that way. I've fought for those things. I am socially liberal, but fiscally very conservative because you can't be a school board member, a city councilor, or a mayor and not be. I'll just say that one of the things that I have learned is to work with anybody who will sit down and discuss the problem and figure out a way to solve it. I have the respect of Republicans that I work with on my committee. Health Coverage, Insurance, and Financial Services Committee, I will bet you there's not a committee that came out with more unanimous reports than that one did. So I'm proud of the work that I've done. I think I've worked really well for the city of Sanford, and I think they've always had their interests at heart.
Thank you. Ms. Menendez Hall?
So I'm not going to speak this evening as a candidate. I'm going to speak as a mom, as a resident, as somebody who cares about my family, my friends, and my community. And I guess I'll preface it with anything that I say, I don't want to be taken as a spin against Representative Fredericks because, I haven't had the opportunity to speak with her prior to this evening. So I just want to put that out there that anything I say is not a dig against her. I am somebody who puts 100%, 110% into everything I do. I don't take a task on unless I think I can be successful tenfold. I hate failure. I am my own worst critic. I think anyone, probably especially my husband, will tell you that. I don't make snap judgments. I'm not easily swayed. I'm not a career politician. I will not be afraid to stand up for what I believe in and what I think the people of the community of Sanford believe in. I'll do what I think is right, and I'm willing to work with people. And I'm trying not to steal from my closing, as you pointed out. Really quickly, because I know I have probably like 20 seconds now. For the first time in a very long time, and I did this after my friend passed, I made a set of resolutions. The last one on my list in 2024 was don't turn down an opportunity, even if it doesn't make sense. A month and a half later, I was approached to run. And as crazy as it seemed, it's that nagging piece in my head told me, just do it and try.
Excellent. Thank you. Ms. Fredericks?
Well, as a freshman legislator, I was obliged to learn parliamentary rule, which is Robert's rule, learn the plays of the game, learn the layout of the State House, learn the powers of influence, learn the topics from education, public safety, medicine, tribal issues. So why vote for me this time? One reason, I'm stronger and wiser. That's one reason. Another reason, I've learned that the spending is out of control. And I, as a citizen, a mother, I see my daughter trying to raise her family, and she's struggling. And I'm trying to give to her while we're struggling. We have a car payment. We have payments. The tax, we need relief. It's time to engage action, and I'm ready to do it and represent Sanford.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Mr. Harrington.
I would strongly encourage everyone to support me for reelection. If you're unhappy with what you're seeing in this state, I think it's a clear choice. I've spent 9 years in the minority. Unfortunately, being in the minority means I'm largely told to go sit in the corner while the 22 Democrat senators run the state. But if you're unhappy with the way things are running in this state and in this city, the last 6 years of full Democrat control, I think we've seen a spike in homelessness, we've seen a spike in violent crime, we've seen a spike in needles all over our city. These are directly tied to programs that are controlled by the majority ruling Augusta. And we need checks and balances in Augusta. And I would encourage you all to support me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody, for your answers. And this last question, we wrote it in mind thinking perhaps most candidates during these kinds of forums would like to be asked it. So, Tammy?
Ms. Kidder, you're on. Name an issue that is important to you that we didn't cover with any of our questions this evening. Why is it important to voters in our districts? If elected, what steps will you take to address it?
Another loaded question. Okay, so, oh, is that, what was that?
I'll let you go.
Oh.
Believe me.
Did I just jump?
I'd let him go anytime, because
That's,
my answer...
You two can duke it out, but one of you's got to say something, and it is Patty's up, so.
I'm gonna yield to Patty because that's just in my nature. Patty, it's all yours.
Well, I think the only thing really that we didn't touch on was women's rights and their own autonomy to their own bodies. And I will definitely support a woman's right to her own body. I understand that an abortion is a very difficult conversation, but it belongs between a woman and her doctor and her significant other. Otherwise, government needs to stay out of it. And I definitely will safeguard a woman's right to choose.
Thank you. Mr. Lanigan.
Thank you. I'm surprised that question wasn't brought up, and I wonder why, if it's just because we've already been painted with our answers. But just for the record, I do believe in a woman's right. I think the bill that we had on the books for many, many years was a good bill. There might have been one exception that needed to be carved into it, not change it to the most radical abortion bill in the whole United States, where you can have an abortion up to 9 months and by an unlicensed professional without penalty. It just baffles me. So I wish it was brought up so we could talk about that, but we're not going to do that today. So, I just get back to the basics, is we need to slow down here. We're not Massachusetts. I mean, when Massachusetts people come here and they're like, holy crap, your taxes are high. Your taxes are high. I mean, they didn't get Taxachusetts for a reason. We need to kind of work together on a bipartisan partnership. It just blows my mind. Like, when I talk about the Democrats, the caucus, Bruce White voted against this abortion bill. He got primaried and lost. He was a sitting representative for many, many years. Great guy, worked across party lines. But he didn't do what he was told in his caucus, and he got eliminated. So that's my fear. That's what I was talking about earlier, is if you don't go with the party, you're not voting for the people. And it's right there in the Portland press. And that happens to many of them. They get threatened with a primary candidate, and the endorsements go behind that person that's going to support the party. You need to start electing people that are going to represent the people. That's what we are, House of Representatives. We represent the people. That's it. It's simple. Start electing them. See who's going to go with the people and not the party. Thank you.
Ms. Bell,
Can you repeat the question, please, so I can make sure I answer it?
name an issue that is important to you that we didn't cover with any of our questions this evening. Why is it important to voters in our district? If elected, what steps will you take to address it?
I guess education would be the thing that would be on my heart and that I would want to change. I run a Christian academy, and we have students that come in from the public school department, and this year we had an influx of those, and in 5th grade, they don't know what a noun or a verb, what is a noun and what is a verb. They don't know any punctuation marks. They don't know how to do math, and they're very behind. So we give them an entrance exam, and we find that we have to put them back normally one whole grade in order for them to be able to do our curriculum. We don't take the same test that the state of Maine takes because our kids scored so well that it wasn't challenging them. I had to go to another state to find tests that would challenge our students. I do believe we give a great education, and if there was one thing that I would say I want to work on would be education. Parents have the right to choose where their kids go to school. Public school is not the fit for everybody. I'm not against the public school system. Matter of fact, I have friends that work in these public school systems, and we correspond with the superintendent, who knows my husband well, and we know him well. We're not their enemy. We're offering an alternative to a parent. And I believe that we should have the right to take our tax money and put our children in the school that we want them to go to, whether it's homeschool or private school or Christian education. Whatever the parent chooses, the parent is responsible for those children. And if there was one thing that I would want to see, even education in the state of Maine, I would want to work with Representative Sampson and bring education up. Our Maine ranks 43rd out of 50 states for education. That's low. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mastracchio.
First of all, I just need to correct a couple of things. No unlicensed professionals are performing abortions in Maine. That is a fact. We owe it to our constituents to tell the truth. Governor LePage primaried Republicans who voted against his wishes. Happened all the time. Two things. I am going to propose a constitutional amendment for reproductive autonomy. We had that on. That is a constitutional amendment, has to come through the legislature. It needs a 2/3 vote to just go on the ballot for the people of Maine to decide. Not one Republican up here voted to do that. Do they not trust the people of Maine to make their own decisions? I don't have a problem with it. I'm not asking other people to have abortions. I'm just saying let women have the right to choose, and let's put it in the Constitution, because what has been happening in other states, I do not trust that the federal government will act and that will be protected health care in the state of Maine. And the other thing that I wanted to just mention that I forgot was that I'm also going to put a constitutional amendment in, and hopefully people up here will support it if we can work it out, which would tax property tax non-residents' homes at a higher rate than residential homes of people who have homesteads in this state. I think that requires a constitutional change. I think it's time to at least start a good discussion about it. Am I done? Thanks.
Ms. Hall.
Well, I think the one thing that I personally haven't talked about yet, although it did come up briefly in a different topic, is childcare. So as a parent to 2 young children that have gone to daycare because my husband and I both work full-time, there's a lot of, I think, need there. There's the rising costs of daycare, which is very difficult for many working families. And it gets to a point where they are choosing between staying home and with their children or working, just because those costs are getting so high. And I think on the flip side, in my personal opinion, I see how hard that the educators in my daycare work, and they treat those children as their own. And I think there's a lot that can be done there to also support them better, because my understanding is it's not a lucrative career in childcare, and that there could be some work done there. So I would say, aside from other things that I've discussed tonight, that'd be something I'd like to look at.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks.
I think the critical issues that are facing the residents of Sanford are the cost of living, but there is an additional issue that we haven't spoken about that is also important to Sanford, and that's the needle exchange program. So Sanford, some years ago, about a decade ago, graciously invited Maine Access Points. There are 13 programs in the state of Maine that, underneath the Maine CDC, it's a harm reduction program. It issues needles in exchange. So clean needles would be issued once the dirty needles were received. In 2020, during COVID, there was an executive order Governor Mills had signed that it was no longer a requirement to return the dirty needles. They wanted to have distance between human beings. So there was no return of the dirty needles, and that is the same as is today. So I have asked for the repeal of that. I have asked, the governor is aware of my interest in this. I've asked the commissioner of DHHS also to address this. So it's not a learning need. The staff in the needle exchange program once did this. The individuals, the addicts, the drug users, they had to return the dirties before the cleans were issued. Fast forward, we have needles, dirty needles strewn all over our community of Sanford as well as in the state. And we can do this by the signature of her pen. We can change this. But in the interim, there are communities that are paying for new employees, new positions to go out and retrieve dirty needles. We're paying for needle boxes to be placed everywhere. It's so backwards. And I think that's an immediate fix that we could do right now. And, minimize the public risk to our residents of Sanford by having all these dirty needles.
Thank you. Mr. Harrington.
Well, I feel compelled because about half the people made this question about abortion. I would just reiterate my stance from 2 years ago on the heels of the Roe versus Wade decision being overturned and the Dobbs decision. I took an oath up here 2 years ago that I would vote against any legislation looking to further restrict or further expand on abortion in the state of Maine. I held true on that, and that will continue. Thank you.
Mr. Lauzon.
Yes, thank you. I think one thing that was missed was educational opportunities for students outside of the norm. So in other words, automobiles right now are becoming more and more complicated. I'm a mechanic myself, so I understand with the computer technology that's now in every motor vehicle, you can't just be a shade tree mechanic today. You have to understand these complicated fuel systems and computer-aided things. And there's also there's going to be a big demand for HVAC. With heat pumps and all of this, these all require special education. I mean, even though a heat pump is nothing more than a refrigerator running backwards, it's still a complicated machine. And it is computer controlled. So I think there's a big market for skilled trades in Maine, and I do applaud and I do support any initiatives that will enhance advanced vocational education programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here we are, the closing statements. Mr. Lanigan, 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes. 2 minutes, you get to start us off.
Wow. I get to start this thing off. Everybody will forget what I said by the time we get through it. So first off, I just want to thank those of you, my constituents, that voted for me and against me in the last election. I'm proud to say that I did my best to try and represent my entire district, like I said, and not go there with a party initiative. and I plan to do the same. I'm an independent individual up there, and I think that's why I'm able to work across party lines, and I get along pretty much with everyone. Sometimes they joke around on the Republican side of the House that I'm the one Democrat that they like. So, not a great tag to have always, but it is what it is. That just shows that I'm able to work with many and all throughout the House. I think we can all see, being at home and in this room today, what the ringing theme is. A lot of things need to get fixed, and a lot of things need to change. And they all want to get changed, but the people that want to change them have been doing them over and over the same way. We haven't changed them. So I think what we need to do as Mainers is we need to change the people that are making the decisions up there for us. We need to give the Republicans the majority in the House, which is important that we can start making these changes. Because if not, we're going to get the same results. I think that's the definition of insanity, but I'm not 100% sure. That's what's going on right now. Every year, Democrat Senate, Democrat is it been 2 minutes already? 30 seconds. Democrat House and Democrat in the governor and the executive. We're not moving anywhere except backwards. 43rd in education, 4th highest in taxes, Mainers moving out that can't afford, homelessness has just gone through the roof. We've seen these problems 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. Mental health, all we've done is stripped resources. Hospitals can't afford to stay open anymore. So why do we keep giving the same people the checkbook and the keys to the state? We need to make some changes, and those changes are for you, so you can have a more prosperous life here in Maine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Bell, your elevator pitch.
Thank you so much for the time tonight. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to allow me to be here and possibly serve the people. Again, I just want to reiterate that I'm not a politician. I'm a wife and a mother and a grandmother. And I just want to bring some fresh eyes and some good change. My opponent brought up abortion. I would not have voted for LD 1619, but I'm not against a woman having life-saving measures and life-saving care. I do love life. I work with kids every single day. She also made the statement that guns kill a lot of children, but so does abortion. So you can go back and forth either way. I'm not in it for that. I believe that the bigger problems today are housing, economics, tax relief, all the things that are affecting the common household. 10.74% of our income go into taxes, and Maine being taxed more than California, that's the things that are important on the table right now. And so if you elect me, I want to work to help solve those problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mastracchio.
It's been my distinct honor to serve the people of Sanford in various roles: school committee member, town councilor, mayor, and state legislator. 32 years of public service for a community I have always been proud to represent. I believe that the purpose of government is to support and improve the lives of its citizens. As leaders, local, state, or federal, that is our job. It isn't about whether the red team or the blue team wins or whose idea it is. Fundamentally, it's about whether we can put aside our differences long enough to actually solve our problems and work for the common good. Affordable housing, good schools that provide options for our students, a job that pays a living wage, quality child care that doesn't bankrupt a family, and access to essential health care services are crucial elements for a quality of life we all deserve. These are the issues I will continue to focus on, as these are the things that most impact the economic and social health of the Sanford community. I do not pretend to have all the answers, but I believe that working together we can find solutions that will positively impact the lives of our constituents. My goal and pledge to you all, should I be reelected, is to work closely with Mayor Brink, the Sanford City Council, the City Manager, the Sanford School Committee, and Superintendent, as well as every member of the York County Legislative Delegation, to advocate for fiscally responsible legislation that will benefit Sanford, York County, and the state of Maine. I want to publicly thank my husband for his support and encouragement. I couldn't have asked for a better partner in this work that takes me away from home so often. He has been there every step of the way, understanding that to do this job properly, you have to show up. And that there would be sacrifices on both of our parts. Finally, it has been a privilege to represent Sanford, and I have tried to do so in a manner that would reflect well on my community and make you proud. I respectfully ask for your vote on November 5th so that I can continue to work on your behalf.
Thank you very much. Ms. Menendez Hall.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Sean and Tammy, for asking us all these questions this evening, and to everyone who put on tonight's event as well as yesterday's. I think it's important for the residents to have an opportunity to view something like this and to learn about each of the candidates. Knocking on doors, I often get asked why I'm running for office, and honestly, it's something I never thought I would do. As I mentioned before, I've never been overly political in my life, and when I was approached about running, I told the individual that asked me that clearly they had been referred to the wrong person. Being an active learner and just being open-minded in general, I had said that I would entertain the idea, but I really wanted to go up to the State House and get an idea of how things were run and what it entailed to be a legislator. And when I arrived, the energy that was in that building, it was palpable, you could feel it, and it wasn't something that I expected. It was impressive to me to see a room of people that were focused on working together and making policy that would benefit our state as a whole. And it kind of clicked for me then that for me, it wasn't politics that I hated, because the policy making itself seems very fulfilling and good, meaningful work. It was the rhetoric that often gets thrown around, and the inability for, I would say, the small minority of vocal people who will refuse to sit down and have a conversation with somebody on the other side of the line. I'm a person who believes in hard work and being a good role model. I pride myself on being a good listener who treats people with respect, keeps an open mind, and is always learning something new. I'll never pretend to know everything, but I can promise that I'll do the research on both sides of a concern to make meaningful impact to our community. I believe the role of a legislator is not about my personal beliefs, but to serve as a voice for our Sanford residents regarding to what matters to us as a whole. I'm not a lifelong politician. I don't have a personal vested interest in serving at the State House. All I am is motivated to do so because I feel like I have the qualities and the leadership skills to represent the community with common sense, integrity, and compassion.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fredericks.
Vote Fredericks. I hope to push back and vote down extreme spending in Augusta. I learned that the Democrats have been in control because there are more of them in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. More of them to vote on their ideas and to pass their plan. I've learned bills are pages long and stuffed with pork. I've learned spending is out of control. I've learned after midnight votes are intentional and nefarious. I've learned that Mainers are not the priority. Mass immigration is. I'm done learning. We have lost sight of our priority, and that's our kids, our parents, our veterans. That is us, and I'm better prepared to push back hard. Mainers can barely hang on to having to juggle the cost of fuel versus the cost of food versus the cost of housing versus the cost of childcare. The list goes on. Taxes have bloated while income stands still. Maine's #1 export is our children. Once they graduate, they leave. We have given generously to all others, and Mainers are left barely able to survive. Last year, Maine had a budget surplus of millions, and despite us Republican legislators and even the governor trying to reason with her people to return the surplus back to you, the Democrats spent it all. It's gonzo. New programs, new positions. Now projections tell us that Maine will not have enough money to pay its bills, and that means more taxes. Lofty spending, generous handouts on all others while Maine is, foot the bill is wrong. It's time for you to vote the way you spend your money, family first. I did not support free care for non-citizens because we can't afford it, because we have homeless Mainers, poor families, isolated elderly. We have veterans that's still in need, because Mainers shouldn't have to scavenge to survive while we give freebies to the others. I am a nurse practitioner, schooled to listen, assess, evaluate, and treat. I have listened. I have learned. Our state has a cancer growing. It's altered our priorities, and that cancer must be stopped. Your vote for me, Anne Marie Fredericks, is a vote to perform surgery, to cut out the waste, to cut out that parasite which sucks our resources. It's time to strengthen our values, stop spending is the answer. I'm for giving a hand up and not for giving a hand out. Maine is first, always.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harrington.
Thank you, Sean and Tammy, once again, for hosting this tonight. I didn't prepare a big, long speech. I would just say, unless you're living under a rock in this state, you can see that we're not headed in the right direction. I would appreciate your vote this coming election, because we cannot continue down this path. And we're on a completely unsustainable path, whether it comes to inflation, spending. We're $1 billion in the hole. Luckily for the next legislature, this $1 billion shortfall really isn't going to really take largely effect until the next governor and the legislature after this one. But we must chart a different course. And the path that we're currently on is unsustainable. There are legislators in Augusta that want to tell you how to heat your home. There are legislators in Augusta that want to tell you what kind of car you can drive with electrical vehicle mandates. I put a very simple bill forward 2 years ago to just prohibit municipalities from banning sources of heat. Very simple bill, just said how you heat your home is up to you. We actually got bipartisan support on that bill, and only to have the governor's climate council, climate energy office come out and absolutely crush that bill. And it's because it's an agenda. And if we don't stop this agenda that we're on, that's unsustainable path that we're on, it's going to be doomed for Maine businesses. There's a reason there's only one industry in Maine, I'll say it again, that's thriving in Maine, and that is the solar industry. And I jokingly say Dollar Generals, because they're paying on the poverty of Mainers. And we must chart a different course. I would appreciate your vote this November. And again, thank you for putting your trust in me for the last 2 years. I will continue to go to Augusta every day and fight for the values of Senate District 33, which I think are underrepresented in Augusta. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lazan?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to thank everybody for, hosting this and giving us the opportunity to, explain the differences between the different candidates. I am a person that shows up. So in other words, I've been a hard worker advocating for other people for over 35 years. I spent 43 years on the railroad, and I spent 34, 35 of them as an advocate. So I don't mind getting phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't mind calling people back and listening to them and listening to their ideas and listening to colleagues on both sides of the aisle and, doing the hard work. I mean, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this because I love Maine. I love this district. I've made thousands of acquaintances and hundreds of new friends. Since I was able to get involved in some of the issues in Maine. So I really want to help kids. I raised 9 kids. They've all got crushing student debt. The health issues are very important to me. Education is critical. I remember my favorite bumper sticker was, if you think the cost of education is high, try ignorance. So education is absolutely critical, and it needs to be well-rounded, it needs to be interesting, and teachers need to be given a leg up. A lot of teachers have advanced degrees, and they can't pay their bills. They can't afford to live where they live. So there's a lot to do here, and I'm willing to do the hard work. And I always like to say, you don't vote for the party, you vote for the candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Gitter, you have the final word of the evening.
Well, I want to let people know that I was raised in a very conservative household, and that I do understand and have Republican and very fiscally responsible roots. I am not a pushover, and I am quite aware that I will not vote straight Democrat all the time. I am my own person, and I I'm humbly asking for your vote, and I'm thanking all of you for being here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. A few people to thank before we call it a night, and then just maybe a couple of details about the big day, November 5th. First of all, Tammy and I, we would like to thank all of you, the candidates, for participating tonight. To the incumbents, it's admirable that you want to stay in a game that is often, very stressful and challenging and trying. And for any newcomers, we admire you taking that leap, and showing that courage, that willingness to serve. Thank you very much. As a reminder to everybody who's watching, there are 4 races here that we've addressed this evening for Senate District 33 and House Districts 141, 142, and 143. So thank you very much for participating tonight. Also, as the gratitude continues, Maura Herlihy, thank you very much for bringing us all together tonight. We're all here because she brought us here, reached out to all of us, so thank you. Also, thanks goes out to Larissa Ricketts, who provided all these signs. Like the way it was done with the each group together, each race together. Kendra Williams, thank you very much for keeping the trains running on time, as I said earlier. Tammy, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
This is always much easier, much more fun with, side by side.
Yep.
And Sarah Schnell, she's back there somewhere. She's the one that brought us into your homes this evening, so thank you, Sarah. And I certainly hope I haven't forgotten anybody. Yes.
I hate to interrupt. I would just like, I don't know if you're going to do this or not, but I think as a final thing, it would be nice to remind everybody where they vote.
That's my next move.
Thank you.
Yep. The election, of course, the big day is Tuesday, November 5. Be here sooner than we think. And new this year and moving forward, one polling location that we all need to report to, and that is the high school on Alumni Boulevard. That is where all voting will take place. It's no longer at the 3 locations that it has been for a few years now. There are, if you want to reach out to the city, there are ways that you can be helped that day if you need any help with voting. But one location, Sanford High School, Tuesday, November 5, polls open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And early voting, I think it's day 3. Early voting has started, and that's something that is an option that's available to all of us as well. Thank you so much. Another year behind us, just a few weeks to go, but thank you, and we'll see you next year.
See you around.